Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. A bitch is back talking about books. And today, what we're going to be talking about is Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. I feel very conflicted. For me, my relationship with Colleen Hoover is very up and down. If you found me for my first YouTube video ever, it was about me talking about ugly love. And how much I basically despised that book. I just thought it was so toxic, and there's just a lot of things that really frustrated me about the book. I didn't hate the book. I just hated the lessons that you were supposed to take away from it, and the actual marketing of it being a romance, which it was not, and the actual conflict being that this boy literally just needed to go to therapy. Like, it was a non-conflict, and like they were just horrible to each other. Anyways, that is my video on ugly love. If you want to watch it, just, you know, click on that video. I have a very like back and forth relationship with Colleen Hoover because I loved It Ends With Us. I read Regretting You, and I honestly was like, it's fine, it's okay. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it. Kind of forgettable. I read Verity, which I thought was also just okay. It felt a little bit predictable, but it was a fun read. Reminders of Him has been a more enjoyable read for me out of all of the Colleen Hoover books that I've read besides It Ends With Us, because I really loved It Ends With Us. So within that ranking of the 4 books that I've read from her, this is my second favorite after It Ends With Us, but I did have some problems with it, but I also did really like it. And I think I realized the reason why Colleen Hoover is so popular as an author is just because her writing feels like butter. It's so simple and simplified that when you are reading it, anyone can read it and you will enjoy it. It's not well written, but I think because of that, it's a positive, the book. It's positive that it's not written in like amazing prose. The sentences, like the sentence structure is very much like, I went to the store, I sat down, I this and that. And when I first started it, it was a little jarring because of the other books that I have read. It's so simple and all of the sentences are so, but because it's so simple, it flows like butter. And you just keep reading and you can't stop. And for this, I read this in a day. I haven't done that with a book in a long time. I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. So what this book is about, it follows a girl named Kenna Rowan. She is, I believe, 26 years old at this point, and she is a woman who just got out of prison for 5 years for involuntary manslaughter. They tell the backstory in the very beginning of the book, but she had a boyfriend when she was 21. It was young love. His name was Scotty. Ken and Scotty fell in love, and one night they got into a car accident, and Kenna leaves him on the side of the road and flees the scene because she's scared and he's already dead. So basically leaves him for dead. She was the one driving, so she goes to jail for 5 years for involuntary manslaughter. What she didn't realize is that when she began her prison sentence those 5 years ago, she was pregnant. So now she gave birth to a wonderful kid named Diemmi, which, mind you, how shocked was I when I opened up this book and saw that she named her kid Diemmi. Because my name, I call myself Diemmi, but my name is Vietnamese. It's Diemmi, and I don't know if I'm butchering my own fucking name, but whatever. I was shocked to see that her name was Diem, because my name is Diem space Mi. So every single time I read that, I was like, is this me? It was so weird because my name feels very unique. I've never read a book where a character actually had my name. And her daughter literally has my name. And I was like, what is going on? And it threw me off, but I was kind of happy about it. I was like, oh my god, like someone actually has my name in a book. Anyways, Kenna gives birth to a daughter, names her daughter Diemmi, and because she's in jail and she gave birth in the beginning of her sentencing, the rights as a mother have been terminated for Kenna and have been given up to Scotty's parents. So she gives birth. She's never met her daughter, never met Diemmi, and this follows Kenna's journey to try to get back to her daughter and finally meet the daughter that she gave birth to but has never met, doesn't know anything about her. But the thing is that Scotty's parents put a lot of judgment on Kenna, blame Kenna for Scotty's death, because in reality, I guess it is her fault because she was the one driving. There's a lot, it's like very, very complicated, the situation, and doesn't want Diem to have a relationship with Kenna. Kenna shows back up in town 5 years later to go finally try to make a relationship with her daughter. There, on her first day back, she meets Ledger. And Ledger was Scotty's best friend. Ledger has an attraction to Kenna right when she first meets her, but doesn't realize, because Kenna and Ledger had never met during the 5 years ago in Scotty and Kenna's relationship. They had never met each other, but Kenna knows of Ledger. Then they have like chemistry connection, they like almost hook up, etc, etc, and the story goes on. They find the truth about each other, they, you know, connect, whatever. So that's basically the premise of the story. It's a very, very simple story, and honestly, in all reality, I think the one downside of this book is that there's not really a lot of conflict. The very middle of the book is very repetitive. Kenna goes to work, tries to see her daughter, gets intercepted by Ledger, then Ledger and Kenna develop more of a relationship. Then she goes to work, she almost sees her daughter, Ledger intercepts, then they get closer. The cycle continues for most of the book. And the one conflict of this is the grandparents. First of all, fuck the boomers. I literally hated Scotty's parents in this. What are their name? Grace, and what's the guy's name? Patrick or whatever? Fuck them, okay? The whole conflict of this is that Patrick and Grace, the grandparents who are raising Diem, don't want Kenna to have a relationship or even meet her daughter. But the thing about this conflict is that there's never really any development with it, and that's the reason why the middle of this book felt so repetitive, is because I feel like a majority of this book should have been trying to convince the grandparents to allow to see the real character of Kenna, who Kenna is as a person, but that never really happens. The one thing that I will give Colleen Hoover as well is that you really, really empathized with Kenna and felt the longing and the heartbreak that she felt every single time she was about to get a glimpse of seeing her daughter, and like she was just out of reach, and you could really feel it. And my tears have stained this book. I was crying throughout the entire thing. All those slipped chances that she never got to see her daughter, all the times that she's just out of reach, and that's like the one thing that she's craving, and Kenna is just so lonely in her life and has nobody, and blames herself for Scotty's death as well. There's just so much grief, so much sadness, so much longing. You could really feel it in this book. I was crying so much, and I really, really liked that about this book. And let's talk about the conflict, right? So the conflict are the grandparents, and it doesn't really get developed. And then this is what I have had a problem with, was that the very end of the book, I feel like the ending was rushed. So basically the ending is that Kenna gets to meet her daughter. Very obvious ending, and Grace and Patrick forgive Kenna for basically killing Scotty, because in the end, Kenna was basically a victim too, but no one really empathized with her. And that's basically how it ends. But I feel like the characters of Scotty's parents didn't feel fully realized, to the point where I just hated them throughout the whole book. Fuck the boomers. Because, like, these people just felt so selfish to me. They were so heartbroken. For 5 years, obviously there's no timeline for grief. You can be grieving in the different ways that you do for as long as it takes you, but they never helped me as a reader empathize with their situation at all. I was just like, they were saying, oh, like, I can't handle seeing her face, like, it's not good, blah, 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 blah. But in my head, I was like, what about the kid? You're only talking about yourself. It would hurt you, Grace, because your sensitive ass can't handle seeing her, but that's not what's best for the kid. That's not what's best for Diem. And they kept talking over and over again, oh, I just can't handle it. Shut the fuck up, boomer. Kept saying, like, fuck the boomers this whole book, because I was just so annoyed of them. Not me talking shit about how sensitive the boomers are, when boomers are the ones who are like, wow, this generation is so sensitive nowadays. Fuck the boomers. Literally, fuck them. I was yelling that this whole book. They're like, oh, maybe it'd be best for Diem. oh, but it's not good for us because she killed Scotty. I will never forgive her for doing that. I will never forgive her. Like, we just can't handle seeing her. Kenna, blah, 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 blah. You can't handle seeing Kenna. You, Grace and Patrick, you cannot handle seeing her. But what about Diem? What about the little girl? You are being selfish right now. I was literally like, anyways. It really, really annoyed me. That's the conflict. They cannot forgive Kenna for doing what they did with Scotty. Then at the very end, the conflict gets resolved like this. In a snap of the fingers, the conflict is just resolved. All of a sudden, the grandparents are like, oh, we forgive you. Like, they read her letter because throughout the book, Kenna writes letters to Scotty. There's one letter describing what happened that night that Scotty died. And the grandparents read this letter, and that's when it finally clicks in them to forgive them. So you're basically mad at this woman for 5 years of your life, cannot forgive her for the life of you, being so stubborn in your ways, being so stubborn to not forgive her to the point where you're going to not allow, not even like ask what is best for the kid. You're gonna put your feelings first, and then all of a sudden you read the letter and now everything is sunshine and rainbows, and it happens in a chapter. Like, if you were someone who's grieving for 5 years, a resolution like that cannot happen that quickly. They just bring her in and like everything's okay. It shocked me. It was like a 180 twist. Like, whoa, the characters of Grace and Patrick just felt like totally different people, and I also realized it's because I didn't really know them as characters. Yeah, that is an issue I did have with the book, even though I really did like this book. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. So the ending felt super rushed in that way. I did like the lessons that the story gives. It's about judgment. It's about empathy and forgiveness and love, right? Like, that's basically the lessons that you get within this book. I think that there are a lot of good quotable lines from that and really good takeaways because of that. I wrote on my Goodreads, if you want to follow my Goodreads, is that everyone wanted justice, and sadly justice and empathy couldn't both fit inside of that courtroom. Colleen Hoover did a great job at sending that message and sending that lesson. Let me talk about a very, very random thing that I didn't like about this book. I also wrote it on my Goodreads, but it was a throwaway paragraph that gave me the ick. It gave me the absolute ick. Because Miss Colleen Hoover, we all know her, love her. She's a white woman, right? This is her. She's a white woman. I understand that if you want to write white stories, because that is where you can come from. She can't write people of color, or maybe she doesn't want to, which is fine. I will read books about white people. I will read white stories. I've done it my entire life, right? If you want to write where you know and where you come from, that is okay, and I will read it, you know? I will absolutely devour it. I will also read diverse books. Obviously, it's amazing to have, and I would love more books with diversity in it and reading from diverse authors. There was a throwaway paragraph in this that gave me the absolute ick about people of color. It's on page 119. So Ledger and Kenna don't really know each other yet, but Kenna knows that Ledger is probably a huge part of Diem's life. She says, when I was in his bar the other night, Kenna, before I knew he was the owner, I couldn't help but notice how diverse the employees were. That made me appreciate whoever the owner was. The other two bartenders, Rosie and Roman, are both black. One of the waitresses is Hispanic. I like that he's a figure in my daughter's life. I want her to be raised by good people, and even though I barely know Ledger, so far he seems like a decent human. But what? That makes no sense. Like, that literally, what does people's ethnicities or races have to do with a white man being a good person? Like, okay, he's employing people of color, the bare minimum? The bare minimum? Actually, the standard, like, he's just employing employees. That paragraph gave me the vibes of, I'm not racist because I have black friends. I'm sorry, what? So basically what they did here was use people of color as pawns for this white story because they're like, oh, I couldn't help how diverse the employees were. Okay, but the main characters are white. Everyone who has an inkling of a personality in this book is white. And the only people of color don't have any character whatsoever. Any personality at all. We don't know a thing about them. Maybe Roman, a little bit. So they feel so tokenized. Like, they really feel like token characters. And that paragraph gave me the absolute ick, because that just proved to me that they were putting, like, people of color as background characters just to bring up the white characters of the story. It felt very white savior-esque. Like, oh, the reason why Ledger is a good person is because he's surrounded by people of color, meaning that he's not, like, judgmental of their skin color. Like, literally, what does people's ethnicities or races have anything to do with the character of another white man? It has no, there's like no correlation. I just couldn't fathom that, and that really irked me so much. All of a sudden he's a decent human being because he has people of color as employees. Like, what? You know what that showed me? It showed me that, oh, not another white man capitalizing off people of color's labor. That's what I saw in that sentence. Either way, that was the only part where I was like, what the fuck? This whole book is literally white as fuck. Which is fine, but then don't use people of color as pawns anyway. So that's what I didn't like. Let me tell you about the little tidbits in this book, details that I did like. So they go into a backstory of how Kenna's home life wasn't really great. She didn't grow up around love. Like, her mom didn't really love her. She was kind of neglected. And so she didn't know what it felt like to be in a loving home. So when Scotty and Kenna, those 5 years ago, were together, they finally met Scotty's parents, right? This is the first time that Kenna has met Scotty's parents when they were together. The impression that Scotty's parents had on Kenna was that, like, she didn't pray. But the thing is that it was just something that Kenna never knew. And there's a line here. It says, "It was so earth-shattering for me to be sitting at a dinner table listening to a guy thank God for his meal and his family and me. It was too surreal to keep my eyes closed. I wanted to take it all in, to see what other people looked like as they prayed. And I stared at the family because it was so hard to wrap my head around the idea that if I married Scotty, this would be mine. I would have these parents, and this meal would be something I helped cook, and I learned how to thank God for my food and for Scotty. I wanted it, I craved it, normalcy. Something I was wholly unfamiliar with." I thought that was beautiful because Scotty's parents took that in and judged her right away, saying like, wow, she kept her eyes open during prayer. Like, rude, when in reality she was really just sitting there like fish out of water. Like, she just didn't know what love was, or like how to be loved, or like be in a loving environment. And I really like that kind of, like, I guess, juxtaposition between what was going on through Kenna's mind and what was probably going on through Scotty's parents' mind. There was this other part where I said out loud in my head, not her trying to rework Ugly Love. Because I talked a lot of shit about basically how in Ugly Love, all of these characters were just blank slates. No one wanted to know anything about each other. No one even knew anything about each other. The readers didn't know anything about anybody. And then in this, on 218, I want to get to know you better. Kenna says, what do you want to know? Then Ledger says, more about you, your likes, your dislikes, your goals. What do you want to do with your life? And in my head, I was like, Ugly Love could never. Ugly Love could never. I was like, not them trying to take back what happened in Ugly Love. And then they had this part where I was like, not them trying to take back what Ugly Love, because I was literally like, this man in Ugly Love, Miles, just needs therapy. Like, he literally just needs to go to therapy. So Ledger is literally the man that Miles wishes he could be. Because they say this about Ledger on 217, right? Right before the other part about wanting to know each other. Kenna says, you asking me to read you one of those letters to Scotty would be like me asking you to play a tape of one of your therapy sessions. And then Ledger says, I don't go to therapy. Maybe you should, says Kenna. He chews his lip with a contemplative nod. Maybe I will. Bitch! A man who would be willing to go to therapy, literally, Miles could never. Anyway, here are a couple of quotes I'll give to end the video off. It proves that time, distance, and devastation allow people enough opportunity to craft villains out of people they don't even know. But Kenna was never a villain. She was a victim. We all were. There's some good ones. There's some good ones in here. So overall, I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5. I sobbed my eyes out throughout this whole thing. Really get the sense of feeling in this, and all in all, it's not a romance book at all. So don't ever think it's marketed as a romance. It's not, because I know Colleen Hoover is a romance author. It's more just a regular contemporary fiction book about forgiveness, about love, and about judgment. So yeah, 4.5 out of 5. There's some weird things in here, some frustrations. Didn't really like the grandparents at all. Fuck the boomers. And if you've ever read Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover, please let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I love seeing what people think. I love seeing if people agree with me or disagree and the reasons why. So thank you so much for watching. Please like the video if you liked it. It costs nothing. Please subscribe to my channel. It costs nothing to do. And yes, thank you so much. I will see you in the next one.